Okay, thanks everybody for joining today's conversation. We're having a very important guest this evening as part of the Rivers 2050 Vision Project. Just before we go right into the conversation, as usual practice, we'll do a quick introduction to the project for the benefit of our guests and a few people who might either be joining us or be watching the recording subsequently. So the Rivers 2050 Vision Project is occasioned by this line of predictions. Forecasting has shown us that there are specific threats to our growth and our existence as a state, whether it's things like climate change and sea level rise, or even like the depletion of oil resources, which we know were a major hydrocarbon economy, or the fact that with our current growth rates, additional 5 million people will join our population over the next 10 years. So all of these threats basically are things that we should be working towards and planning. And normally this would be government's role to play, but the Rivers 2050 vision is quite unique in the sense that we're turning the pyramid on its head basically, and having citizens co-create what the next 25 years should look like in collaboration with government, as opposed to what we usually have, where it's government leading the entire process. So far, we've had over 115 members, task force members. These are young people, Rivers people within the states in the diaspora, who are basically leading the projects through the various subcommittees. We've recorded now over 20 hours of content available on YouTube, and engaged over 34 experts across several fields. Now, we've spoken to people in youth development and sports and agriculture and stuff like that. And there are many more thematic areas we're going to cover as the time goes on. So stay with us. We hope you can continue to join us over the course of the coming weekends as we continue to have these important conversations. Most recently, one of the things that got us really excited over the week was the fact that our project got selected by the School of International Futures, which is basically one of the leading foresight institutes in the world, as one of the only projects from West Africa, actually, that will be supported next year, given its really like unique approach to long-term vision and our long-term planning. So that makes us really happy, and we're looking forward to how that support will help us deliver this project. Also, all of the content that we generate is available on the website, the Rivers 2050 website, www.rivers2050.org. And then all of the recorded conversations as well, right from February when we began this project, they're all available as well on YouTube at youtube.com/policy shapers. And our dream is that next year, hopefully before the middle of next year, we'll be able to launch this just before the election conversations begin to get into overdrive. And hopefully this would be the ideas and the thoughts and the visions by River citizens who basically set the agenda for what the election should be about. It should be about the problems that the people have and how public leaders can help solve these particular problems. So we hope that this vision book will help in that regard. So today's conversation is River State and Niger Delta Agenda. We've had the CEO of the NESG come speak to us about River State and the national agenda, because Nigeria has a Nigeria 2050 agenda, and sort of like discussed how we can connect with that agenda. I think today's conversation is quite key because River State, being one of the top 3 largest states in the country, leading states in the South, for so many years we've been that, but data is there to show us that our position as, in quotes, the leading state is not as safe as we think. Whether we're looking at things like GDP, IGR, HDI, we can see states like Akwa Ibom, Imo, Delta, and Co. all coming really, really close to us. So it does mean that we actually need to keep setting the pace as a state. If you look at things like poverty, multidimensional poverty, currently River State ranks 4th in the Niger Delta region with 62.4% of the population in multidimensional poverty, which is really high. That's 6 out of 10 people are multidimensionally poor. I mean, for a state that's blessed with so much immense resources, that doesn't make any sense, right? So that's part of what we hope that the Rivers 2050 vision would do, sort of like help us answer those questions as to how we can align our states And most importantly, our guest today has immense experience at the state and regional level, so she'll also understand and give us some insights into what Rivers State can do to continue to set the pace for the Niger Delta region. So I'll just read her bio quickly. This is a very summarized version of her bio, obviously. Many people do not know this, and I feel like it was maybe like 5 or 6 years ago that I found out that I guess even though most of us know her a lot more for her work in public service, she's actually an award-winning investigative journalist. She was the first Nigerian female journalist to win the CNN African Journalist of the Year Awards, which is a really big deal, because eventually so many other people eventually won. That's Tolu, Leslie, and co. Won it. But I mean, she's been doing this since the 90s. She's a journalist, journalism teacher, administrator, author, activist, financial analyst. And she's worked for over 27 years across Nigeria's and America's leading media outlets. She served as the Honorable Commissioner, Ministry of Information and Communication between 2009 and 2015. And in December 2015, she was appointed Acting Managing Director of the NDDC. She's a revered women leader in our community, and I can boldly say in our state as well. She's also a devoted Christian who teaches during Sunday school at her local Nigerian church. So just looking forward to hearing all of the wisdom that she would have to share with us today. And I'll be passing this on to our moderator, Chiwendum and Bira, our rapporteur for today's conversation. So over to you, Chiwendum.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And we look forward to hearing what you have to say to us today in this conversation. So the first question I have for you, if you're ready for us to kick off, is for you to tell us about what Port Harcourt was like for you growing up and what memories have stayed with you from growing up in the city.
Port Harcourt growing up was a lot of fun and very safe, very secure. I still remember how, would go to Sunday school. I'll leave my parents home. I mean, everybody was everybody else's auntie or uncle. So the Tobys the Odorfias, the One-Oddies, it was just, so if I ended up in the home of the Dorfias, we ate. We didn't, the Dokubos, everybody, the Ichokus, we all grew up, the Omezis, and that was it. So we literally would just walk into each other's homes, and every parent had a right over the other child. God catch you. I mean, God just catch you that any auntie or uncle catches you. They will do the discipline on behalf of your parents, and they would love with the same fierceness with which they would discipline. That was the Port Harcourt I grew up in. And the value system was the same. It wasn't just that we all it was one big family, And if you were a Port Harcourt boy or a Port Harcourt girl, that was what you needed to be, You were either a Port Harcourt boy or a Port Harcourt girl. Whether you were from Anambra or from Sokoto or from Rivers, the lines were blurred. And Port Harcourt boys and girls had a swag, Even if they were going, when they would do train journeys, because I went to a federal government college, when they would do train journeys going back to the north, the Port Harcourt boys and girls had their own style. In fact, I remember my mom telling me that even when they were younger, once you had Port Harcourt boys and girls enter a train coach, everybody else gave them way. It was Port Harcourt boys and girls. So that was what everybody knew. You were either a Port Harcourt boy or a Port Harcourt girl. You were not identified by any other thing, and they had a swag to it. It was a beautiful city. And it was a place where everyone loved to come to Port Harcourt, because we came to Port Harcourt, it was calm, it was serene, and, it was good for business. And if you think about how Port Harcourt was planned by the colonialists, you will understand that it was planned to be a melting point for all of West Africa. So you had the Saro Potters, and even when I was growing up, the pidgin we spoke was not anything. In fact, our pidgin was different, You can they do like so, can they do like so. It was that kind of thing. It was more of Creole, and even that one self, we used it for swagger, because it was a different kind of thing. We were identified by our class. We were identified by our style. We were very, 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 every Port Harcourt boy or girl was elitist. Everyone, it's not about cash in pockets, you know, regardless of what you had. You know, we just had that, we had that chip on our shoulder.
Yeah, you were talking about how Port Harcourt, people had their own class. You're making me very jealous of growing up in Lagos. So
no, honestly, you should be jealous. You should be. You should be.
I am.
But honestly speaking, it was a lovely time. And like I said, you know, families, we knew they knew whose daughter you were. They knew whose son you were. It wasn't difficult at all, you know, and it was a good thing. And here's the thing, and that was what I was saying, whether you came from Arochukwu or you came from Sokoto, you know, you were a Port Harcourt boy or a Port Harcourt girl. You were not identified any other way, you know. And we had our swag, we had our own pidgin. It wasn't this kind of things that are spoken now. You know, our pidgin is sweet. It was the Creole, you know, it had a ring to it, you know. So, you know, we could recall people going to, I mean, I remember, and, you know, it didn't matter if you were privileged or not privileged, you know, the churches, we knew the general churches, you know. If it wasn't this church, it was so if you were Roman Catholic, if you were Baptist, and the churches even interrelated. The priests among the churches would, you know, they would do an informal exchange of pulpits, literally. It was that kind of community that we lived in. A community where everyone felt safe, everyone felt comfortable, everyone felt loved, everyone felt a part of the other. And like I said, we had our swag, you know.
Okay. Thank you so much for that response. That's, like I said, you make me very jealous of growing up in Lagos. So the next thing we would like to know is, many people don't know this about you, but once upon a time you were an award-winning journalist. So could you tell us about what that phase of your life was like?
I think I've been more of a journalist than anything else, and I still practice. I mean, I practiced journalism even while I was on campus. I practiced as a secondary school student. I was in the press club. So it wasn't, in primary school, I was writing poetry, you know. And so when I left school, before I left school, we started, you know, some friends of mine and myself at the University of Benin wanted to start an investigative magazine patterned after Newswatch. And so we had what we called Campus Watch, you know, and we were serious. It was, for us, it wasn't the usual, you know, at that time, campus magazines were basically gossip magazines, who is doing what with whom. No, we wanted to be a news magazine, and we didn't make any pretext about it. So we went all the way to Lagos. We met with the founders of Newswatch. We had that kind of friendship, literally. And that was how Campus Watch was born. So this is about what you would call startups, if you like. And when I wanted to go for youth service, I really prayed to be in Lagos. And, you know, if you know my father, you will know that he's not one that to go and beg anybody for you to go anywhere. So it was between me and God. So the only person who was going to make it happen was God or God or God. That was it. So when we came to collect our call-up letters, then you picked up your call-up letters as you were graduating, you know, in school. So we're waiting to pick up call-up letters, and then I saw my Lagos. I mean, I jumped. I was so excited. And why did I want to go to Lagos? Simple. I wanted to be a journalist. And there was no way I was prepared to practice anywhere else but where it was happening. Now, roll that back. I had a few, my aunt, you know, I told you everybody was your auntie or your uncle. So Auntie Ngoba Agola Aspinall at that time was in Ajip. I said, Ibim, you will serve in Ajip in PR. I said, Auntie, no, I don't want. And then Uncle Humphrey DC said, my friend, what is wrong with you? Do you want to be a poor girl? You must work with Fedicine. I will send you to, in fact, I want you in oil and gas. I said, Uncle, I'm not interested. What is wrong with this stubborn girl? you know. He said, who is going to marry a journalist? I said, I don't know, but I want to be a journalist. So, you know, every uncle, every auntie was interested in keeping you somewhere where you will make good money. You would, I mean, and here was I. All I wanted to be was a reporter. So I go to Lagos. While I was at Ipaja camp, I said, look, this reporter business, how am I going to do it? So I take exit. I go to, because if they didn't post you, you wouldn't go. And if you were not requested, you wouldn't get it. So I went to Vox Region of Nigeria to meet Patutomi. Patutomi was like a mentee of my dad and looked up to him. So I went to him and I said, then he was writing for the Vanguard, as well as being the MD of Vox Region Nigeria. So I said, hello, sir, I'd like to work at the Vanguard. He said, the Vanguard is a tricky and difficult place to work. But you see, this is me. I wanted only the best. I was not even prepared to start with. I wanted either Vanguard, Guardian, or Concord. So he said to me, but you know, the Daily Times, then Yemi Ogunbi was at the Daily Times. Daily Times is being revamped, and every big journalist you see started at the Daily Times. I said, hey, okay. So I carried myself, off I go to the Daily Times. Onyemo Gochukwu was general manager. And I knock on his door, I say, yes. I say, I want to serve in the Daily Times. Looked at this small girl, that left school pretty young. Looked at her, and I didn't used to wear makeup. And, you know, I just wear, once I wear down my skirt, wear down my shirt, off I go. So he took one look and he said, you want to work in Daily Times? I said, yes. He said, and you think we are working in Daily Times? I said, I can. He said, we don't pay. I said, I'm not interested in your money. So at that time, the editorial board was meeting. So he said, Sonala Olumese, Lizzie came, Femi Ajayi, Idan Alibi. I mean, these were the names. And he said, this young lady wants to work with the Daily Times. You guys interview her. I went, and they started asking me, so okay, we're about to start a women's magazine. At that time, Madeline Tador was editor, they were about to start a new magazine called Poise, was a women's magazine. And so they said to me, well, so what would you bring to the table? Oh, I said, thank you for that. And I went off on a roll. Anyway, cut a long story short. You know, I went, they said, okay, Madeline, are you willing? Of course, Madeline was already willing to take me. Because, you know, here was a Rivers girl. Again, remember, one family. So this is how I started at the Daily Times. And then, now you would ask, but you should have been able to go to Newswatch now. You and them had a discussion. And when we were in school, Dan had said to us, whenever any of you gets into Lagos and wants to say, please feel free to come to Newswatch, we will take you. But I didn't want it to look like anything was handed to me on a platter. I have that kind of, I want to earn my shirt. So I refused to go to Newswatch. I wanted to go where I will earn it. I will know that I earned it. Anyway, that's how I started at the Daily Times. Soon after that, I moved to Quality Magazine, you know, by the next year. That's a story for another day. But that is how my journalism journey started. And Quality was a Newswatch. How did I go to, by this time I had got my scrapbook with enough stories, you know, and I started feeling like Daily Times is not challenging me enough. You know, I don't want to do this women magazine. I want to be in investigative reporting. So off I go to TSM, the Sunday magazine, and I go to meet Chris. The day I walk into Chris's office, she's sitting down, she's wearing a black shirt, a white shirt, black pair of 3/4 trousers, and had a gold belt around her waist. It was like a chain belt. Her feet were on the table. And I walk in and I say, I want to come to TSM. She said, I don't employ women. So I said to her, but Comfort Obi is a woman. She said, look, you're very young. How old are you? I said, 21. Do you plan to get married? Yes, I do. In that case, I can't employ you. I said, okay. You know, and I left. Then I go to Quality Magazine and I meet Louisa Agui-Ronsi. Well, then Ayonote, Ni Agui-Ronsi. And I said, this is me. This is what I want. This is the work I've done. And Louisa had never met me before, really. I had seen her when I came to see Dan Agbese in the newsroom, but we didn't talk. So she carries me and decides to own me as a matter and takes me to the editor. She was deputy editor of Quality Magazine then, takes me to Bala Danabu and says, this girl will be a good fit. Bala asks for my scrapbook, looks at it, gives me an assignment, I do it. He goes to the Newswatch bosses and say, we have to take this girl. Yakubu said, why are you so interested in this? I mean, are your girlfriend? But I said, I've not met her in my life. And that's how I ended up in Newswatch. Now, when I then get to Newswatch, I now go to see Dan and Ray, who had met us before. And I walk into that, I said, oh, Ibim, you're in town. I said, yes. He said, oh, so how you doing? I said, I work here now. I said, you work where? You know? And I felt good, you know. And so began my journey into the media and into investigative reporting. And it was, again, I first and foremost think like a reporter. I love being a reporter. I'm proud that I'm a reporter. It's one of the most exciting things I've done in my life. And it's not something I would give up anytime soon.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. You've described such a love and passion for the media and reporting. So what inspired you to make the switch from media to public service then?
I didn't plan to. I didn't plan to switch to anything. I mean, again, if you follow my trajectory, you will see that I was in media and civil society. Military rule, I was involved in a lot of, I almost got arrested how many times, you know. I did a story, I broke the story of the attempt on President Obasanjo's life when he was in jail, and they were looking for me everywhere and all of that. So public service and me were like this. Now, add to that my father served as deputy governor, and I saw the psychophancy, I saw the attempt at destroying people's beautiful relationships because of politics. So thank you, no thanks. That was me, you know. So I was busy doing my business. I had worked with TEL, worked with the BBC, and I had started my own magazine, Business Eye. It was the first all-color investigative business news magazine in the country. So I was enjoying my thing. And part of what Business Eye did was that we also used to do financial analysis, market analysis, et cetera, et cetera. And then we used to carry out what we called performance reviews of government. Because Business Eye, you know, our mission was to hold government and corporations accountable to the people. So I had gone to Kwara, and I'm cutting this short, met with Governor Saraki at the time, and we had done a midterm report on Kwara. And then Governor Amici came into River State and had come, had seen the work he was doing. I thought it was brilliant. I'd seen Commissioner for Works, Dakuku. And Business Eye had done a midterm report for the Ministry of Works and had dropped a proposal for the River State government to do a midterm report for them. This was 2009. So Amici had done 2 years, and I was like, okay. And I'd come and I had presented that. I'd also done an interview with Governor Amici. So off I go to Lagos, and I get this call. We're having I still remember my editorial meetings held on Mondays. So I was chairing an editorial board meeting, and I get a call. Hello, this is Rotimi. Can you see me in Port Harcourt tomorrow? I said, oh, sure. And believe me, in my mind, hey, my proposal is done. The guy has agreed. So I come to my staff, get me copies of what we did for Kara. Can I have the letter for River State in case he's misplaced it? Give me a this, give me a that. You know, everything, just be ready. I'm leaving first flight tomorrow. I'm off to River State. The governor has said we should come. And here was I, very happy that we're going to get our midterm reports. Farthest thing from my mind was anything politics. And so I gather myself, and then just as we're wrapping up, my deputy editor then, you know, says to me, Madam, I had a dream. I say, I had a dream. In that dream, oh, you got an appointment. I don't know if it's federal. I say, but please, madam, if they give you an appointment, please don't say no, because I think you would need to do something about, you know, all this talk we've been doing. And I was like, please, 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 please. Who is the person that wants to give me appointments? Where is it going to come from? Well, I'm not having those conversations with anybody. I'm not in the space where we're discussing about. So please, 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 please. Anyway, can we have the thing? Let me go and get this, our business from River State. And I arrived. So I arrived from the airport straight to Government House. And they opened the gates without wahala. I said, this River State Government House, they must be very friendly. Oh. And this is interesting. Oh, that's a new face to governance. I had already started my story in my head. How the new face of the story, I already had the headline. Then I get there, I think it was at the banquet hall. They say, oh, the governor is at the back or something. So I'm like, okay, he's at the back. Okay. They say, no, but come. So, and then as I'm arriving, Blessing Wikina and his team of photographers, I said, Blessing, the reporter is not the news. Why are you snapping pictures all over the place? What did you do yourself? You know, and I'm like thinking, what's wrong with Blessing now? I'm the newsman. I'm not the newsmaker. Why is he snapping picture anyhow? Do you know that Blessing had heard gist? I was in blissful ignorance, oblivious to what was going on. So he now comes, he was, I think, in a retreat with his commissioners. So the governor steps out and he says, oh, Ibim, yes. I said, oh, thank you so much, Your Excellency, for seeing me. I brought that. I said, I don't want to waste your time. This is our letter requesting. This is the magazine we did for Kwara. He said, that is not why I invited you. It's not why I invited you. Okay. He said, what would you say if I asked you to be Commissioner for Information on River State? I said, excuse me, where is that coming from? I said, look, Your Excellency, I already believe in the work you're doing. I don't need to be your commissioner to promote it. So please don't bother yourself. You know, I'm fine. I'm really, really pleased with what you're doing. And he said, that's not what I asked you. What would you say if I asked you to serve Rivers people as Commissioner for Information? I said, Your Excellency, I'm sorry, I have to think about this. You know, and he said, oh, you just have 2 weeks. I want to announce. I said, no, Your Excellency, it's not like that. 1, my daughter is going back to school in Switzerland. I need to take her back to school, number 1. Number 2, I need to think about this. I need to talk to my husband. I need to talk to my dad. I need to be, and I need to pray about it. So please, sir, you'll give me a bit more time. I've told that. I said, yes, sir, thank you, sir. And I left. As soon as I got in the car, I called my husband. I said, you don't believe what happened. He said, what? And I told him, he said, did you give a response? Did you say yes or no? I said, no, I didn't give a response. I just asked him to please allow me think about it. So he said, okay, fine. So don't say anything. When you come back to Lagos, we'll talk about it. Because of course, I left Port Harcourt at 15, straight to University of Benin, from Benin to Lagos. I didn't live in Port Harcourt. I had stopped living in Port Harcourt. From age 10, I was in boarding house in Federal Government Girls College. So really, where is this coming from? And then I get home and I talk to my dad. He says, okay. And if you know my dad, you know he tends to be very analytical and deep. He's not someone who just does things, you know, on a whim. So he says, well, okay, what did you respond? I said, I told him I needed to think about it. He said, okay, good response. Then he said, but, you know, you've been in the private sector and you've been doing a lot. This is the time to put your money where your mouth is and see how public service tastes. And then he said, if you want to do well in business, a bit of public service experience will not hurt. And then he said, you've reached the pinnacle of your career. Everybody knows you all over the world. But do they know you at home? You're a Rivers woman. Isn't it time to give back? I said, okay. Okay. All right, Daddy. Thank you. I went back to Lagos. But you see, those conversations from my dad, my husband thought, you know, you can go. I said, what about Waiboko? That was my last son. He's just 9. Okay. He said, he'll be fine now. He'll be here with me. I said, you know, that was another problem. Yes, the girls were already in secondary school. That's fine. But my baby, you know, he then said, no. But I said, you know, I needed to talk to people who were my professional fathers, you know, my professional fathers I looked up to. So I went to see Danagbesi, who I call my dad. And I said, this is what has just happened. And what do you say? He said, he laughed. He said, I hope they know what they're getting in for. I said, Oga. He said, no, because, you know, I hope they know that you will say no. And I hope they know that you will walk away if you don't. I said, I believe they would know. He said, well, so he said, you know, all of us in civil society and media have made a big mistake. We all stay on this side. We talk about what is wrong, and none of us has thrown our hats into the ring. So maybe you should. 1. Number 2, he said, but before you go, present a charter of demands. Tell him the things. First, tell him what you think is your job description. Tell him how you plan to go about it. ask him what his view is, and tell him your deal breakers. And agree that when those deal breakers occur, you're free to walk away. I went to see Nosa. Nosa literally repeated the same thing Dan said. So after all of that, I then got in touch with the governor and said, okay, sir, I think I'll be able to do this. But before that, I need to talk to you about XYZ. So I came to him and I said, this is my understanding of the role of the Commission for Information based on the mandate of the ministry and what I know as a communication person. One. Number two, these are the principles that guide me. X, Y, Z, there's no point recanting all of them. And if this doesn't happen, I can't do this, da, 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 da. So, sir, this is where I stand. Is this agreeable? And he said, done, I agree with everything. And I have to say this on record, that to a large extent, now not 100%, but to a large extent, he kept to that. And I am grateful that he did, because it made it possible for me to do my job.
Thank you so much, Ma, for that. Wow, that was such an interesting story. But I'm very keen to know, what are the lessons that you learned in the course of serving the state? Did you eventually find it worth the time?
Say that again. Say that again, please.
Yes, I was saying, what are the lessons that you learned from serving the state? Did you eventually find it to be worth your while?
A lot of lessons. Did I find it? Let me start with, did I find it worthwhile? Yes, I did. And I'll tell you why. Many, some of the reasons may not be reasons people think, but yes, I did. Reason number one, I had told my principal at that time that my intention was to move Rivers State to the point, because don't forget, at that time we're bearing the fault lines of the Niger Delta struggle. So when they thought Rivers State, they thought militancy. And I said, I'm going to change this opinion. And so I wanted to announce a Rivers State open for business. And I achieved that. Second thing was, I told my principal, I will make you the hottest thing on the lecture circuit by the time we're done. And I achieved that. I said to him, I will move you from local champion to global reference. And I did that. I was determined to reposition government communications. So the first thing we had was an open government summit. And I was glad that I was able to do that. We were able to have a website that allowed Rivers people share their thoughts on whether we were doing good or bad in government. And I remember one interesting incident in cabinet. I had put out an opinion poll to find out how they thought we were doing in education. And the poll came back abysmal. And this was what we were hiding ourselves in. Our education was so great. The poll came back and Rivers didn't think we were doing well. And I presented it in ESCO. Everybody almost chopped off my head. First Commissioner of Education, who is my sister and my friend, said, please, how can I don't know, governor, everybody. And I said, my job as commissioner is to give you the word on the street and tell you what the people think. When I'm in cabinet, I speak for the people. When I leave cabinet, I speak for government. And they were like, what? But eventually, the governor said, okay, let's interrogate this perception. Again, if you look at my backdrop, I have reality and perception. Sometimes reality is different from perception. So my point was, this is a perception audit. We need to address it. And so we started looking, what might make people think so? And then I said to them, maybe we need to start communicating the fallouts of all of the things we're doing in education. So what is our completion rate? How are we doing in external exams? Maybe we need to start putting out the data that shows the benefits of the brick and mortar. But maybe we should also look at what challenges. So part of why people thought so was, we went to a place like St. Andrews, demolished it, and built a structure that could take less than 1/5 of the student population. So the governor then rethought it. And so for big places, then we'll go to communities that need only 7 classroom blocks, and we'll put a 14 classroom block. Many of them will be inhabited by lizards and cockroaches. So just that small audit made us have a rethink of policy. And so I was glad about that. I also was the first Commission for Information to start a state, sub-national rebranding campaign. Again, change. The change you started hearing, started in River State. Change you can see, change you can feel, change you can talk. It was our slogan that was moved on and became the APC slogan. It was our slogan. And so we started the Rivers Rebrand campaign, Brand Rivers. And using my Port Harcourt girl, Port Harcourt boy experience, we started the Port Harcourt girl, Port Harcourt boy. We used to have Port Harcourt boy, Port Harcourt girl t-shirts that I made people wear, made people wear Port Harcourt logo and all of that. And again, we still have the brand manual. I was hoping that subsequent governments would carry on with it. Indeed, as Commissioner for Information, in addition to my handover note, I left a copy of the brand manual on my table, hoping that whoever came after me will understand that it was about River State and carry the brand. But to cut a long story short, do I have satisfaction? Yes. Do I have regrets? Yes. Things that I thought could have been done differently. But I think I have a lot more of ups than I have of downs in the way I feel. Now, one of the most special things to me was the fact that I was able to grow a band of young Rivers people who, whenever I look at where they are, I'm very proud. Young Rivers men and Rivers women who were my foot soldiers, quote unquote, in the communication sector, and who honestly are now much bigger than you. They're now big madams and big guys. I can't even touch their bottom line. And that, there's nothing gives me joy greater than that. In fact, that I would say is my happiest. I was able to, for my professional association, I was glad that we could rebuild the NUJ and have the NSC Koli Press Center. The idea behind it was so that it would be self-sustaining. I really wanted journalists to be able to speak their mind. And I was coming with what we've done in Lagos. In Lagos, it was us who built our NUJ Center in Lagos, and we used to use it at that time. We used to earn our revenue. So Lagos journalists can talk anyhow to any governor, and that was kind of what I hoped would happen. The NUJ Press Center was built in a way that I would be a revenue earner. Has that all happened? Maybe not, but do I have a few things I wish had happened different? I mean, we got equipment. We got literally the Rolls Royce of printing for the Tide. We never got around to rebuilding the Tide. I had a whole concept for a media village. We didn't get around to that. But we got equipment. Got an OB van for Radio Rivers, great studio equipment. I only wished, again, that going forward, people had then done the infrastructure part, because I really wanted a vibrant state media. But all in all, it was a worthwhile experience. There were days I cried, as you would in public service if you truly want to serve. There were days I was grossly misunderstood, as would happen if you're a leader. But there were days that were good days.
Thank you so much for taking us on that emotional journey. I don't know if it was for everyone else, but it was for me. But after serving in the State Executive Council, you also served as acting MD of the NDDC. And as someone who has served at both state and regional levels, what role do you think Rivers State can play as a major force in the South-South region?
I was in Akwa Ibom State, I believe, last weekend, and I was very sad. Why was I very sad? I was very sad because I could see that Rivers Open for Business has switched to Akwa Ibom Open for Business. Akwa Ibom had become the regional powerhouse. Cross River, Calabar is dead. Port Harcourt is dead. Uyo is breathing. As a Rivers woman, that gave me a very sad moment. as I drove from Uyo through back to Ikorekpene to visit a friend and senior colleague, I felt truly sad. And why did I feel sad? Because River State is the epicenter of the oil and gas in the South-South region. River State has 2 ports, 2 airports, and can have more ports. River State has a lot going for it, and ideally is a regional powerhouse, as it should be. Not to mention the expertise available in the state. So River State should really be at the fore in terms of setting standards, in terms of, being the regional giant. And we have everything it takes to be that. What we appear, and forgive me, to have gotten wrong is our politics. A politics where we kind of major on the minors, and where we don't understand the benefits to be derived in each government piggybacking off the other. So that, so you go to Akwa Ibom and you see that Victor Atta this was his road map. And you see the road map is being continued. So regardless of the fact that Victor Atta and Obon Akpabio were not friends and were at loggerheads, Akwa Ibom interest was paramount. So Akpabio understood why Akwa Ibom needed to Dakada, needed to stand up. And Pastor Mo, before Pastor Mo, Udom comes and understands that, okay, there's something on the table, all right, to connect all LGAs. Okay, it is on this table, we continue. Me and Akpabio have fought, but I'll fight regardless, we continue. And then Udom comes and decides, no, we can't. So the continuity in governance is interesting, which is why Lagos continues to thrive. Continuity in governance. So the blue rail and the red rail started ages ago, and it's moving on. So you go now, you can hop in a train. The maritime, the linking of, you get on the train and then get on the bus and then get on the boat. Transportation plans. Linking a city that was known for its horrible traffic. Now, that is how sustainable economies are built. That is how you become a regional giant. Focusing on the state interest first. And then we can have all our petty quarrels, but it shouldn't affect the global picture. Because you see, if River State becomes the slave master, becomes the whipping boy of the South-South, every one of us loses. Businesses lose. Individuals lose, because don't forget where we started from, the Port Harcourt boy and Port Harcourt girl who had swag, no longer have swag. So when you sit among your friends, you're literally covering, they say, are you from? And you're like, my mother is from Akwete in Imo State. My cousin is from, my brother married Kaduna. You start explaining other linkages to explain that you're not totally a Port Harcourt person. Now, for me, the father, mother, and husband are Port Harcourt. How will I run away from the brand? You see? So these, and that is on a lighter note, but that really is a fact. That you lose your pride of place when you allow petty schisms get in the way.
Thank you so much. So now we want to talk a little bit more about your time at NDDC. And 25 years after, and over $16 billion invested in NDDC, What's your personal assessment of the Commission's performance? And what can be done by the Commission and state governments as well to ensure the region lives up to its potential, given the issues that you've also mentioned?
So let me start with what can be done by state governments. The Niger Delta Development Commission Act says that the trustees, and I use that word in a very loose way, that is the bosses of the NDDC are the state governors of the 9 Niger Delta states. They are the bosses of the MD. So the MD is supposed to submit reports. They ought to be able to call for a meeting. All right. The 9 state governors should be able to call for a meeting to say what is going. That's number one. The second thing is that the NDDC in its master plan had envisaged that it would be, just like the word says, an intervention agency. Therefore, in its budgeting and others, it is expected that the NDDC would have a handshake with the oil companies, with the state governments, and with the federal government, so that budgeting would not be each person repeating something and doing 2 classroom blocks and so on and so forth. The third thing is that the NDDC's job is to advise the federal government on how it should manage matters in the region. Therefore, the NDDC, for instance, should be able to send an advisory to Mr. President on what the Ministry of Health should be doing with regards to the Niger Delta, on what the Ministry of Environment should be doing with regards to the Niger Delta. The MD of the NDDC is supposed to submit an annual report to Mr. President on the activities of the Commission. And when I acted for 11 months, but every quarter I had a quarterly report of monies that I had received, ongoing projects, status of each project, how much I had disbursed, how much had been spent, and for what. I submitted it to Mr. President, to all ministers of Niger Delta extraction. I sent it to every state governor, and I sent to our senators. I also put it on the website so that communities could go online and see the status of their projects and alert us if a contractor was not on site. Because a big issue was the matter of accountability by the Commission. The second thing that I tried to put in place was to say, okay, you talk of Shell standards. The NDDC should be able to have the best standard with regards to, and the Federal Ministry of Works standards will not work in our region because they don't know the region. So I got all the engineers in the Commission. I set up a committee and we prepared an NDDC standards book. We didn't stop at that. I took it to Koren and requested for a peer review from Koren so that they will approve that standards manual, and it will become the manual that will guide every work done by any contractor who was going to deliver any service to the NDDC. I didn't get to sign the final document before I left, but I do know that they had sent me a copy which we reviewed, and Koren had brought a copy to my successor. What happened thereafter, I may not be able to tell because I don't know. But in addition to that, I asked the project, my project team to also come up with setting guidelines, including costing and all of that. Now, why did I do that? The other challenge the NDDC faced was substandard projects. And so I said, if we could have a standards manual, then we can deal with the issue of quality of projects. What else did I do? I realized that there were certain leaking holes, leaking pockets of the Commission. And so the first thing I did as an acting MD was I said to them, I'm sorry, I shall not be paying for water hyacinth because it doesn't exist. And it is an avenue for tiffing for both the MD and the non-MD. So guys, all of us together, we shall not have water hyacinth. And some big men came and said, Madam, I said, I'm so sorry. You see this particular one, I cannot append my signature to it. Ditto with desilting. So for the period I served, we neither had water hyacinth nor did we desilt. I only had to pay for those that had been given before. But there was something else I did. One of the challenges of the NDDC was you didn't get your money if you didn't see somebody, or if the money was not big enough to see somebody. So when I came, I said, okay, all debts below 2 million pay. So people sat in their houses and were receiving alert. I said, next stage, all those below from 5 million and below pay. And people sat in their houses again and received their money. And why did I do that? Because I thought it was pretty unfair that a small contractor from the Niger Delta will go through the trouble of doing a job that he probably has struggled and maybe even paid to get. And then he doesn't get paid because it's not big enough, or because it doesn't run into billions. So what do I think can happen at the commission? You see, the problem of the NDDC is not just about the people at the NDDC. It's about everybody. Like I told the directors the day I resumed, I said, if the civil servants say no, no politician can steal. Because the politician will write and say, pay. The civil servant say, okay, madam, put it in writing. No politician wants to put it in writing. And then even if he does put it in writing, you advise that you cannot do so, but you are directing. Nobody wants to direct against the law. So you see, if those who truly have the power, the bureaucracy says no, some of the corruption we talk about will not exist. But it's not just them. It is the person in the village who will abuse you that you finish as MD of NDDC and you don't have a big house like I don't have. Or who's a very stupid woman. I think now she's suffering, driving car that is breaking down the road. Nonsense. They cannot bring money, let us chop. It is every Niger Delta person. The people get the government they deserve, darling. So if we ourselves are not willing for probity and sincerity, and we think that once someone gets into government, they should approve, they should go. You see, if you see the kind of proposals they carry to MD of NDDC, and when he says no, he will be a bad person. And not everybody wants to be a bad person. Some people want to actually be good. So that they will be good to all of you, they do what they may not even want to do. I don't even want to talk about the big men individual and how they are part of the problem. They will give them contract, they won't do the job. And if the MD does not give them or does not pay them, they will carry him and go and report him. Those are the ones that have lunch, breakfast with the president, lunch with the general, dinner with the governor. So you see, all of us must determine that we want things to work in our country. It's not about one person or the other. But having said that, let me say one thing. Sometimes the only presence of government in some far-flung communities in this country, in this region, is the NDDC. I drove through kilometers and kilometers, through bushes and swamps. And sometimes the only presence that there is a government, local, state, or federal, is the commission. So much as we want to knock this commission is also the reason people actually have a life in some parts of the region. Knock it as much. You see, people cannot get, it's not everybody that can get contract in Abuja, but you see this commission, small people can see small things to do. So can we make it better? Yes. Is it all bad? No. Is there a lot of looting going on? Oh, yes. As in every other aspect of our national life.
Thank you so much, Ma. You've said so much. I think there's like a lot to unpack there. So I think this would be a good point for us to take questions from anyone who has any questions for Ms. Ibim. People can drop questions in the chat as well if you don't want to unmute your mic. But while we wait for questions, so we can move on to the next question for you if you're ready. So I'll just keep a lookout on the chat and see if anyone wants to ask a question, but we'll just move forward and then attend to their question after that. So given everything you've said, what is your advice to us as young leaders working on the Rivers 2050 Vision projects, trying to strengthen River States and Port Harcourt as a strong force in the South-South region? How can we ensure that the vision becomes a reality and it's adopted by the government?
You know, one of the things I say is faith comes by hearing. So the fastest way is, you know, when we started the Rivers Rebrand project, we wanted to make Rivers people believe in themselves. And so our slogan was Rivers of Possibilities. And it really did. You could see a lot coming out of River State. Because people then knew it was possible. You really have to, you know, the other thing is we've got to tell our stories differently. And we've got to tell our stories ourselves. Nobody's going to do it for us. Nobody's going to help us be more. We're going to have to do it. Now, you people are going to have to ensure, you know, you're going to have to quit wanting to be PAs and SAs to people and begin to hold their feet to the fire. You people must begin to say, excuse me, you say you want to be assembly member. Okay, you've been assembly member for 3 times and we haven't seen anything. Why should we send you back? You people must begin to say, you want to be our governor. That's okay. This is our charter of demands. What can we expect of you? And you people must be willing to actually ask questions of those that are in government, whether we are appointed or elected. Because you cannot be leaders if you are afraid to even speak up. All my life, I have spoken up, whether when I was doing Aluta in university or as a reporter. I can't even imagine what. But you know, if we are comfortable in the shit room, and excuse my French, very soon it will begin to smell like perfume. And I think Joshua says he wants to ask a question.
Yes, he does. Do you want to take his question now?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, Joshua, are you happy to unmute and ask your question?
I've sent you the request to unmute, Mr. Joshua.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
hear
can
me?
hear you. Yes, we can.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I can hear you.
Good evening, good evening to the host. I'm Joshua. I'm a journalist, work with Channel Television in Port Harcourt here. I'm interested in government communication aspects of this interview. You have said a lot on how you were able to approach your principal and got his approval. Your principal to me appeared as someone who was willing and very receptive, so it was a lot more easier. In a case where you have a principal that is resistant, that is not media savvy as your principal, how do you approach it? So you have a lot of ideas, you push to him, you talk to him about it, no matter how beautiful. He tells you, keep it aside. When you even raise memos, he keeps it aside, and then it becomes a bit frustrating. How do you approach it to know that you have something to deliver? You just want him to accept that you should go ahead.
So Joshua, you recall that I started by saying that before I accepted to be commissioner, I gave my conditions. And one of those conditions was that we will run an open government policy. He signed on. Second condition was that any meeting that I was not present in, and I didn't get a full briefing of, I will not defend it. I will not discuss it. Any matter I did not understand totally, I will not discuss it until I was properly briefed. And he agreed. The other thing I also said was, okay, any day your principal and my principal no longer align, I shall say goodbye or you're free to sack me. And I meant every word. Now, so my point is, you've got to, and I said, these are my professional standards. Below this, I will not go. And I did have an instance where a colleague refused to give me a full brief on a matter that had happened before I became commissioner. I sent him a memo, he didn't respond. I followed up by letting my boss know that, listen, I don't have a full brief on this, and it's about to cause you embarrassment. I got brief from a colleague, a junior colleague who works in so agency. So if I don't get a full brief by tomorrow, I will direct journalists to so person. My principal did not answer, so I said, okay. So that day, journalists came and I said to them, no problem, wait in my office. I picked up my phone and I said, Honorable Commissioner of this and this and this, I shall be sending so number of journalists to your office. They want to be briefed on XYZ. Please brief them, because the River State government must respond based on our open government policy. And I sent them. And that day, I was willing to be sacked. Next ESCO, the person reports and I said, Oga, can you imagine? Journalists came and commissioner. I said, yes, sir. I actually did, because if you recall, I had this, I had that, I had sent a memo, I had this and that, and I was not briefed. And Your Excellency, I don't know how to tell lies. Public relations for me is not about telling lies, it's about stating the facts and managing the outcomes. So again, government communication that's what it is. It's about being able to manage the outcomes. And when government, I always used to say to my colleagues, government is not infallible. And you say, I say, yeah, government is not infallible. Government can make mistakes. So government should be able to admit when it makes mistakes. And Joshua, that the biggest bribe for any journalist is friendship. So when you say, Joshua, to be honest, though, we made this mistake, but please, I beg you, just try. It is this our state. If you go and talk it like this, you go scatter something. The truth is, because even in the US, they protect government. So if you approach it properly, government will be protected. I don't know if that has helped.
Yes. A great deal. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Ma, for that. I think we have another question from Ms. Sime. Are you happy to unmute and ask a question?
Good evening, Ma. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I joined in quite late, but from the conversations I've had so far, Ma, you speak as one with so much integrity, and as one who, as it were, doesn't have some sort of fear for anybody. Sometimes what we perceive as those who are holding government offices or public offices, for us in the society, we have this perception that these people don't have integrity, or they have some sort of things that they do that they don't tell us, but they just come to the public and then we see a kind of thing. But now talking to you on this call, or having you talk on this call, and you're speaking from a point of integrity, it takes someone who served and served properly to come and do this. So I want to ask, how does someone serve and then serve with so much integrity without fear? Yeah, that's my question. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Sime. Let me say this, and I say with every sense of responsibility. I truly don't even think that anything I did was because I was strong enough to do it. And you will permit me, but I'm going to have to maybe go a little. My faith is my anchor. I'm a Christian. And again, I'm not the best Christian in the world. I would love to be. I'm striving for perfection. But I'm truly afraid of going back to headquarters, which is what I call heaven. And God says to me, I gave you this opportunity. What did you do with it? So I have given you 5 talents. Where are they? What have you done with them? And then I start stuttering. I don't want that to happen. That's one. The second thing is that I believe that I had a lot of prayer support. Even prayer support from people who just say, okay, there's a Christian, let's pray for her. I know some of my old school friends who were praying for me, and I know that their prayer helped. It was only because people prayed that I could even dare to say no when it would have been impossible to say no. Did I falter? Oh, yes, I did. Oh, my goodness, I did falter. But the fear of what I will tell the God who is first of all my master before any boss. And then what my father said to me when I became commissioner, he said, all I have is my name, don't spoil it. And what he also said, and my mother said, now you'll be commissioner, you will either make a name or make money. If you make money, you will never make a name. But if you make a name, maybe someday, somehow you will make money. Those three things guided me. So, you know, it wasn't, and then I was just privileged not to have parents who asked anything of me. My children were also a guard because I raised my children to be mouthy and to ask questions. So I didn't know how I would face them when they would challenge me and say, Mommy, did you steal that money? How could you? Mommy, how could you? That's terrible. And if you know my children, you know that they will tell me that way, the way. And I didn't want to deal with them and their mommy, that's embarrassing. How could you have done such a thing? So that too was a bit of a guard. And my husband could have also put a lot of pressure. And I was lucky that he didn't. Because there are women who would have spouses that would say, come on, steal the money and come on, are you mad? And so they will be dealing with the crisis of a spouse who wants them to steal and managing. So I guess that there's a lot of support I got from the Lord, from my children, from my parents, from my husband. And it helped. It helped. And truly from friends who, I don't have too many friends, but the few friends who bent their knees and scraped their knees praying for me. I'm sorry if it doesn't sound like a practice, but this is all I know. That's all I can share.
Sure. Thank you for sharing something so personal with us. Okay, I don't think we have any more questions, so we'll just ask you our final question. So this final question is one that we've been asking all the guests who engage as part of the Rivers 2050 vision. And the question is, what is the river state of your dreams? Where would you like to see the state in the next 20 years?
The river state of my dream, you don't even want to know. But it's in the brand promise, a place where everything thrives, a place where people will live, work, invest into business, a destination choice. It used to be, and that was, we tried to do that in our rebranding, where we said, okay, go and stress yourself in the stress of Lagos, run around for the contracts in Abuja. But if you want serenity while doing business, come to River State. And that's the River State of my dreams. Beautiful, calm, a place where friendship thrives, a place where everyone sees a river of possibilities, of opportunities. That's the River State of my dreams.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ibim, for sharing that and for everything that you've shared today. I mean, I don't know if for anyone else, but for me, it was such an emotional time listening to you. So many key things came up, things about open governance, things about just hearing about the passion and love that you have for what you do and for the states and how you've showed up. And you make it feel like such a privilege to even work in public service, to serve your
It is
country.
a privilege. It is a privilege.
I can imagine.
It is. I say, And I do say thank you to Governor Amici for giving me the privilege to serve my state, and to himself and President Buhari for the privilege to serve my region. It really is, I consider it a privilege.
Thank you so much, Ma. We're so grateful for your time and for all you've shared. I'm sure that we'll all be better for this. And thank you so much for just joining us today and contributing to this vision that we have for River State. And we hope that the rivers of your dreams will actualize through this vision that we're driving. So I'm just going to hand over to Eben now to, good, thank you.
Yes, thanks. I mean, not to keep our guests longer, man. You've stayed with us for more than for almost 2 hours now. But thank you so much. Even with the technology challenges, you still came back. Thanks to everyone else that joined in as well. Just like I said during my presentation, all of the information that we share as part of the project is available, will be available on the website and also on YouTube. So this conversation as well, the recorded version, will be shared on YouTube. We'll keep you posted, Ma, on the various processes in the run-up to next year when we plan to launch the book. We're still speaking to experts from, I think, across 15 thematic areas. So people in education, people in healthcare, and the rest, just to get their insights as well as to how River State can progress. We were able to speak to the current Commissioner for Health, that's Dr. Adeze Ore as well. So we hope to get as many people as possible to be able to contribute to this exercise. So thank you so much again for your time. Have a great rest of your evening, and thanks everyone. Thank you so much, Amanda.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye everyone.